good true crime story starts with a 911 call. Wife and mother Bri Kuhn called a 911 police dispatcher for help.
My husband pushed me up against the wall. It's turning on the floor.
Things get worse and worse.
What was that? You just me.
I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher with many years of experience in the field. I'm going to listen to and break down all of these 911 calls, all that and what it means for your weekend on the comm side. Drew Breasy, your podcasting host with police benefits with almost 30 years of experience. We're going to really be relying on you this week as we try to figure out what the heck's going on with these Florida cops.
Hey, John, before you get too deep into this, stick around for the end because we have a major update on a case that we covered. Actually, we have two major updates, but we have a major update on one of the cases that we covered.
Just came out of Florida. It's the case of Bri Kuhn. She locked her husband Colin in the garage and ended up shooting him 4 times in the back during a 911 phone call, which you guys are about to hear, which, by the way, is never easy. I've been a 911 dispatcher for 9 years, and I didn't enjoy hearing this call. I have taken 911 phone calls in which people were on the phone with me, and it is not easy to go through. So I'm going to try to get through this without being triggered at all. I'm just going to go in with the first 911 and have some commentary.
Emergency. Hi, can I have a police officer come to the address?
What's going on?
My husband pushed me up against the wall. It's turning on the floor. And he started having
so big?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any weapons?
There's guns in the house, but no.
But nothing.
So far, it's a by the numbers domestic violence call. We try to figure out if the parties are separated. We try to figure out if this battery or this assault is in progress right now. I've also taken 911 calls from women in which they are literally being struck while on the phone with me. Those are some of the cases, of course, that I remember for all time. We've got to establish how many people there are in the house, how many people are at risk, whether or not there's any weapons involved. Again, we've covered this many times on the comm center. Are there weapons in the house? Well, of course there are. There's knives in the kitchen. So there's a weapon in every house. But what's most important is there a weapon in hand? If a police officer arrives on scene and sees a guy with a Santoku knife in his hand, Drew, how does that change your response knowing that a suspect might have a weapon in hand?
If there's somebody there with a weapon, they're going to be dealt with accordingly. It doesn't matter the nature of the call. Like I think that just about any police officer is going to react to whatever is in front of them. So, I mean, if you're given special knowledge that, you're responding to someone who has been hit with a bullet, then you obviously know that there's a gun in play somewhere. And if you walk up there and you see somebody holding a gun, you're going to treat that accordingly. But just, relatively speaking, if it's a stabbing and you walk up and somebody's holding a ginsu, you probably want to secure that and act accordingly.
If I take a 911 phone call and I'm talking to my reporting party and she says that he has a knife in his hand right now, that's going to tend to escalate police response because they want to get there and then in time to prevent a murder. Understanding whether or not a suspect's under the influence of drugs or alcohol is pretty important because we need to know if he has any diminished capacity to be listening to police commands. Police officers are going to be telling him fun things like drop the weapon and all this. We want to be able to make sure that he can understand. Giving pre-arrival instructions such as, are you able to close and lock a door between you guys? Are you able to leave the scene safely? Can you get in a car, go down the street, go to the police station, meet a police officer elsewhere? A 911 dispatcher is heavily involved in a domestic violence call as it comes in because our goal is to separate those people. And sometimes we can do that through advice. Not always, but sometimes we can. A domestic violence call is also very dangerous for the police. It's where police officers tend to be most often hurt and killed. And usually 2 or more police officers go. I'm going to continue the phone call.
No, anyone's hands? No. Has anyone been drinking or using drugs? No. And what's your first and last name? Okay, give me one moment so I can have my deputies on the way, okay? Don't hang up.
John,
okay.
I don't understand this because I think I watched probably the same coverage of this that you did, but they redacted her name, but for some reason they did not redact his name. And he's actually a victim. I guess I'm putting 2 and 2 together in my head now. Like for that call, she was supposedly a victim. He didn't become a victim until later. I guess that must be the reasoning. But normally there's a law called Marcy's law, and a lot of states have adopted it. And it just essentially says if If you're going to release public records, you have to redact anything that will identify the victim of a crime. So if it's an alleged crime that took place and there's a victim's name, that's why sometimes officers' names aren't released. If they're shot and they shoot somebody in return, sometimes they don't release those names because they get the protections under Marcy's law, although that's been challenged in court too. But
it's very interesting commentary, and I think as a 911 dispatcher, I think that this is well timed, because as you take this call as a 911 dispatcher, you're hearing this woman saying that her husband is acting out. This is just what we deal with every single day, particularly on Sundays, as people face the sad prospect of returning to school and work and exchanging custody of children. But you hear a woman calling for help, and 911 dispatchers, maybe I'll just speak for myself, but I'm predisposed to believe the person that calls me and says that they're being battered by their husband. Not only just to completely fly in the face of every stance I see him to take for the Menendez trial, Drew, not just to make you insane, but as she dials 911, you can tell that she's upset. You can tell that she has legitimate concern. And as a 911 dispatcher, this is what I fully expect to have happen. You'll come to find out that they're separated. Police officers will arrive on scene. And what I'm looking forward to doing is everything that I have to do as a 911 dispatcher subsequent to an arrest. Now, every agency is different. I'm going to be filling out paperwork and notifying the jail that we have someone in custody on our charges. But that's what I'm expecting. And I'm not expecting the incident to go on all day or to have repeated incidents. And we're going to talk about some differences in the law between where Drew is and where I am. This is the part that's going to be very interesting.
Here's an interesting tidbit too. Sundays are usually higher for domestic violence because of the transfer of custody, just like you talk about. You know, it's the weekend's up, so they're going from dads back to moms or whatever. That's when abuse reports actually increase a little bit because, you know, they get home and they find out the kid has sunburn. So obviously the father didn't put sunscreen on the kid, and that's, you know, the worst form of abuse in the world. And I'm not joking. That's what people call and report all the time.
Dirty clothes, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
unexplained injuries.
It's out of vindication. I mean, it's not necessarily because the kid's actually abused, which is a shame. And then there are some legitimate, you know, calls. Interestingly enough, I don't know if there's ever been any studies about this, but when I was a 911 dispatch, you know, an operator, we could tell when halftime hit in the locally televised games, because the increase of domestic violence calls would go way up because the guys would have, would get their bathroom breaks, or they'd be yelling, "Get me my sandwich," and wouldn't be getting a fast enough response. So they would make it violent.
Those, and also traffic enforcement says people pour out of the bar to head home to watch the rest of the game at home. We tend to see a surge in that. So it's just funny how ripples in a pond, you can detect these things. I'm going to keep going with the call. Dispatchers talking to police at this time on the radio.
Okay, ma'am, where are you in the house?
I'm in like the kitchen master bedroom with my
104.
My older son.
10-4. I'm sorry, you're in the master bedroom?
Yeah, with my 4-year-old.
10-4. Where's your husband?
He was in my daughter's room.
Okay.
Lady, are you okay? Okay.
Okay. Are you able to stay in that room until the deputies get there?
Well, yes, but I don't want him to take my daughter.
If he's going to throw me or yourself in the room?
With him. With my son.
You're with your son and he's with your daughter. What kind of car does he drive?
So we're getting some information here that's going to be absolutely crucial in the trial. She seems to be expressing some fears about whether or not her husband, her other half, as we sometimes refer to it, just easier that way when dealing with all kinds of different domestic situations, the other half of the argument. She's worried that he's going to be leaving the scene with some daughters. And it's getting her mama bear mode going. She seems to be protective about the kids. She seems to be upset about the prospect of him leaving the scene. We've talked about, she mentioned that he was nearby in her brother's room. You listen in the background and you think you can hear what sounds like a convivial good time. I don't know if that's the television set or whatever, but Bri is very clearly upset while she's on the phone. If you listen closely, you can hear that the dispatcher is taking the call and dispatching it. There's some split ear going on, and the dispatcher's not constantly engaging the caller because she's having to do some heavy lifting herself. I suspect in a place like Pensacola, probably because they're understaffed, but we're going to get police officers on the scene. We'll go ahead and complete the phone call.
It's Santa Rosa County, by the way.
A red truck. Okay. Well, just stay on the phone with me, and then once the deputies get there, if they do come across him, they'll be able to get out with him, okay? But it's important that you guys, don't interact until deputies get out there. What's your husband's name?
Colin Turner.
Colin Turner?
Yes.
Okay. Is that Collin?
Yes.
Okay. About how old is he?
33.
33. Okay. Are there any other adults there?
No.
You said no. Okay. And how old is your daughter?
3.
She's 3 years old. What's her name? Okay. And how old is your son?
4.
4 years old. Anyone else there?
No.
Okay. And what's your son's first and last name? And you said that your husband drives a red truck. Do you happen to know what the tag is?
No, he has a disabled veteran tag.
Disabled veteran tag. Do you know the make or model?
No.
No? Okay.
And my 12-year-old will be home from school at 2.
Okay. And is there another car out front?
A white Traverse.
A white Traverse. Okay, ma'am. We do have deputies en route. If anything changes, call us back on 911, okay?
Okay.
So we have a couple things going on that are interesting here. First of all, the 911 dispatcher asks Bri about vehicles. This is, of course, in case Colin does take the kids, and we have what you would not legally call a kidnapping situation, but one in which he takes the kids and flees from the scene. Police officers might have to do some sort of interdiction. They might have to be on the lookout for him as he leaves the neighborhood, particularly if he was intoxicated or if he was being violent. These are all excellent reasons why you would want to be able to know what vehicle to look out for while you're on approach. The dispatcher asks, do you know the make and model? This is because dispatchers can check to see which vehicles are registered to a person there. Knowing that he has disabled veteran plates, probably going to be able to figure out this pretty quickly. Also knowing if there's another vehicle that he has access to. This is all just basic intelligence gathering. So that as police officers approach the scene, if he does take off, we'll even have a license plate handy and ready to go. Something else that's interesting is that the dispatcher is asking about her husband, Colin. The dispatcher also says, about how old is he? She doesn't ask specifically for a date of birth. She wants to know, is it the same Colin Turner that's 33 years old? Because her screen probably is displaying that there's a Colin Turner that they've had prior contact with that's 33 years old. So this gives you a lot of context for this 911 call. That police have had contact with Colin Turner before. It could just mean that he's been cited for speeding or something before. It could also means that they've had address history. Whenever you're taking a domestic violence call, something 911 dispatchers will do a lot is that we'll look at all the history at this address. What happened the last time police were here? What was the complaint at that time? What were the issues? Who was involved? What ended up happening out of that? Was there an arrest made on a prior occasion? Could we be looking at violations of conditions of bond or protection orders or things like that? All of that will come to bear. Finally, danger seems to be escalating. We're talking about a 12-year-old kid coming home at some point. We know that there are young children there in the house. If the situation continues to become dangerous, we know that a 12-year-old is going to be there eventually. Now, Colin is going to dial 911 because police officers have responded to the scene. They have not arrested or separated either Colin or Bri. That is both their legal residence. They both have a right to be there.
Where's my
Hi, is my wife allowed to get me some ring?
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Is my wife allowed to not let me come in my own house? Is that legal?
I don't.
First of all, I'm going to stop you right there. Somebody's dialing 911 or calling the sheriff's office on a non-emergent line, asking a question, is this legal? This is not an actual legal question. In fact, it is not even an actual question. He is making a complaint in the form of a question saying, my wife is stopping me from entering the home. Can she do this? He, of course, knows that the answer is not. He's already been talking to police officers earlier that day. And by asking this, it's his way of sort of being passive aggressive about it, saying, my wife is stopping me from coming into the home. Please come down here and set her straight. The dispatcher knows that the answer to his question is whether or not this is illegal is send a police officer. I'll continue the call.
I'm not sure what you're referencing.
Oh,
Is there something happening?
my wife has locked all the doors and said I'm not allowed to come in. So I'm outside with my daughter screaming because she wants to go inside and I can't.
Okay, what's your...
We also have some use of the children as pawns here. The child's crying on the phone. The child's acting as a barrier to successful communication just because we're having to hear that. As the 911 phone call opened up, the child was screaming. And now the dispatcher's trying to have a concise talk about what's happening at their house. I'm just saying, as a 911 dispatcher, and this is not a professional take at all, but I'm listening to this man calling and having this child crying on the line and being part of this conversation.
I can't stand when people use the kids as pawns. And I'm just using this as an example because it's based on experience. You'll get that 2:00 in the morning call from the angry father who's like, hey, I can't get a hold of my daughter and I'm really concerned about her now. She and my ex-wife were fighting and she texted me. Now she's not answering her text. Why don't you just come out and say, you want me to go knock on her door, wake her up and hassle her for arguing with your daughter? I mean, that's really what you want. It's not about checking on your daughter. If that were the case, you'd probably be over there knocking on the door yourself. But you don't want to get out of bed. You want me to go do it. And it's bullshit. And I'm not going to do it. So as a shift commander, I would cut those calls off right at the knee. I would say, I would find a way to either make sure that the kid's okay through a phone call or some other method, but we're not going to go be the enforcement arm of people like that. And people do use their children all the time as pawns like that.
So this actually is way more common, not just in custody disputes and domestic violence stuff, but in welfare checks. This is something that will go on a lot where someone will call and they'll ask for a welfare check on a family member. And this is all because of some conversation that's been had recently that they're not sharing. I took a request for a welfare check recently, and I said, okay, when was the last time you heard from this person, and what's the reason for the check? I said, well, I last heard from her 5 years ago, and she said she would get back in touch with me, and she never did. I'm like, so you're telling me we're in the midst of a true crime mystery that's lasted 5 years, and you've waited until 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday night to call? There's quite a bit more here to the story that you're not telling me. I'm guessing that your daughter doesn't want to talk to you because you're a toxic individual, and to let her know that you can flex power even all the way from Oregon, you're going to send a police officer straight to her door to remind her that you exist. That's something that happens quite a bit.
You know what else happens quite a bit, John? More than people probably would suspect. Hey, I just see on Find My iPhone that my girlfriend or wife is, I think she's been abducted. She's showing that she's at the Holiday Inn Express. I think she's been abducted. I think you need
She's
to
being human trafficked there.
Right. I think you need to go find. She's supposed to be at work. She says she works at.
Go check out that situation and stop any good time that may be going on.
Right. Happens more than you know. And girlfriends do the same thing. Girlfriends and wives. They use the cops to be their own personal private eyes sometimes, and or interrupters of their ill repute.
Yeah, y'all have already been out here once today.
Yeah, and you said that now your wife is not allowing you to come outside?
Come inside, yeah.
Come inside the home?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many?
She's 3. She just woke up from a nap. She's cranky.
Isn't there like another child home as well?
Yeah,
right?
My 4-year-old's inside. She said he's napping, and my 12-year-old stepdaughter is inside. Hey, baby.
And there's also a 12-year-old child.
Yeah, my stepdaughter. Hey, Ladybug, we're gonna go inside in a minute, okay?
Okay, so this is Colin Turner.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a 3-year-old. Okay, what's a good? I'm so sorry. 61.
You want some water?
Okay, what's a good callback number for you, Mr. Turner?
910-333-5762.
Okay, we're on deputies out there shortly.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Bye.
I will say he's frustrated with the situation. Like, you could tell he's frustrated with the situation, but he's basically, I know that he's no longer with us, so it's tough to kind of joke about him, but he's basically saying, it's okay, baby. I got the locksmith on the phone. It's not that he doesn't have a right to be in there either,
Right. But he's playing calm. He's playing the good guy. And I'm just telling you as a 911 dispatcher, and if you're someone who hasn't listened to a lot of these calls, it is very much all for show. You can detect that he's trying to project that he's the good guy. He knows the police have already been out there earlier today. He knows how to interact with and play with police so that he can appear to be the good guy. Let's play devil's advocate against our own selves for a second there. Let's suppose something was going on where he pushed or struck Bri Kuhn, and the police went out there, and it was they interviewed or talked to both of them, and absent any physical evidence, marks or anything like that, Colin was able to convince them that nothing happened, that he's the calm one, that he's the one who's trying to be a good dad. He's a stay-at-home dad, if I recall correctly, while he's going to school, and he's trying to take care of those kids. He knows that the best way that he can do this by interacting with the police is trying to be the rational one, by being the objective and the reasonable one. We have no idea, of course, what happens after police leave the scene, but if I had to guess, just based off of this behavior, that as soon as the police are gone and after he's off the phone, that the reign of terror, passive aggressive or active or whatever it may be, will continue. Colin and Bri both have a right to be there. Neither one of them has decided to be the adult person. Neither one of them has decided to make the wise decision and just leave and go to McDonald's and play in the ball pit.
Office emergency.
Hi, you guys have been out to my house twice today, and then most recently the deputy talked my wife into letting me in the house, and then she locked me in the garage and tried to break my arm when I was trying to get back inside.
I'm pausing at a very strategic point. You can hear an elevated tone. He's under some stress, and you can tell. Yes or no?
Yes, but he's also making accusations very willy-nilly.
He tried to break his arm.
Hey, you guys were out here earlier today, and you already decided with me one time that it was okay that I got back in the house, and she tried to break my arm. And
that aside, you could tell though that there was a confrontation that took place, I guess is my point. Obviously his voice is elevated, like his throat is constricted a little bit. That's what happens when you're under stress like that.
What's your address, sir?
She's currently got me locked in the garage because earlier she broke both of the big doors, and then when I came out here to fix it after getting in the house earlier, she locked the door behind me. And then when I said,
what was that?
"You just shot me!"
Holy crap! He has just been shot. You can hear the shot being fired. He screams "ow" because being shot actually is extremely painful. He says, "She just shot me." Drew, I think you're right when he says that there's been some sort of huge confrontation, and I don't think that we have heard the truth about it. We have just heard a shot fired. He says, "She shot me." The dispatcher's hearing this in real time after sending police officers out to this house multiple times. And we've just got to be feeling terribly because we have tried multiple times to solve this issue throughout the day, and now it seems to have escalated to the point of ultimate violence. I'm going to continue the call here.
Jonathan, she just shot him. I just heard 4 shots. Sir, are you there? Do we need to get somebody there? He's not answering. Can we change this to a 32? I got no answer. Sir, can you hear me?
I think we might be listening to the redacted version of this, but what you should be hearing is a shot fired, him screaming, "Ow, she shot me," and then subsequent to that, 3 more shots. Hearing the shot, hearing him scream, calling out, "She shot me," and then hearing 3 more curdled my blood. And I have been in this situation before, and it still affected me.
Hello, this is the sheriff's office. I can hear you moving. Can you hear me? Can we get EMS en route?
Sir, if you can hear me, I've got help on the way. Mr. Turner, I don't know if you can hear me, but I've got help on the way for you. Did anybody try to call the wife? If they could make 1025?
Trying to contact her, see if we can negotiate maybe to have her come out of the house.
Him, and he was telling me what was going on. No, I got radio. I just got silent. And she come in and I heard bang and he screamed and said, "She just shot me." And then 3 more. Oh no. Sounded like somebody just moved something or opened a door. I'm not hearing any children. I can't tell if it's the phone or him breathing.
As a 911 dispatcher, to not hear any children after hearing 4 shots, I am fearing the worst. It's typically men who tend to be family annihilators. We've covered a case of that here on Comm Center before, but my worst fear would be that she had shot him fatally in the back and then had turned the gun onto the children who should be crying after hearing a sound like that.
Somebody's 1012. Somebody's screaming. Hello, this is the sheriff's office. No. 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 Hello, this is the sheriff's office.
So that's the end of Colin's second 911 call. Obviously, the dispatcher stays on the line, attempts to talk to whoever may be inside. You heard her mention at one point trying to make 1025 or contact, unless I'm misreading that 10 code, with the female inside. You would want to talk to her if she's just committed an act of violence or if she does have the kids hostage there in the house. Talking to her, being able to establish communications with her for tactical reasons, but to give her directives to come out of the house with her hands up. Things like this will avoid a violent confrontation between her and police. We have every reason to believe that she has just shot her husband in the garage. The other thing that's interesting is that the 911 dispatcher is empathetic until the end, saying, "I don't know if you can hear me, but we have help coming." We presume that he's laying there, life draining out of him, and the only thing that he has to hold on to or to keep him going might be that 911 dispatcher's voice trying to give him some sort of hope that help will get there in time. Of course, the children, to say that they were fine is a huge and dramatic leap away from the truth. They're obviously not fine. They don't have a mother or a father. She's been sentenced for first-degree murder. She's facing life in prison. This is from the Pensacola News Journal, just to kind of bring you guys up to date. There was a 4-day trial. U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer, which is no small feat, Bri Kuhn, was found guilty on Friday of murdering her husband in her Gulf Breeze home and sentenced to Florida's Department of Corrections. Kuhn was stationed aboard Naval Air Station Pensacola during the incident. She was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder against her husband.
The only other thing I would like to talk about on this 911 thing, some of you know I wrote a study basically on mitigating the stress of PTSD within the 911 industry. And I just want to share part of it with you. Oh, Pierce and Lilly are I'm quoting who. And the study also affirms that physical distance doesn't buffer the telecommunicators from exposure to PTSD, and those PTSD incidents can impair decision-making. They affect the telecommunicators while they're working, while they're at home. But here's something of interest. The first 4 factors to consider when an emergency call automatically routes is first, the nature of the call itself. Second, the emotional state of the caller and their reactions. Third, and most often forgotten, are the background noises that both the caller and the call taker are hearing. And then the last is the consideration and the emotions and the course of action taken by the call taker. For example, there have been calls in our center where the call taker has had to hear the panic and terrified plea in the voice of a wife who, unbeknownst to the call taker, is about to be shot and unalived by her estranged husband while she's on the phone pleading for help. Although that's an extreme example, hearing a female's voice and then gunshots and what later proves to be the last living word are all being processed by an emergency call taker. And that is going to contribute for the rest of her life to her post-traumatic stress, whether it manifests itself within the next couple of days or she gets to retire after 30 years and she's sitting on her recliner one day and all of a sudden it punches her in the face. It all lends to the unhealthiness of post-traumatic stress. It all lends to the importance of paying attention to what 911 dispatchers go through. These are the most overlooked things when it comes to the profession of your profession, Jon.
I completely agree. And when I was listening to the version last night that was not redacted, I had to relive a little bit of that and just remind myself, that I'm safe and I'm fine. But it instantly reminded me of the call that I had to take earlier this year that was surprisingly similar. Drew, did you want to update us on those two things before we go?
I got two things to update you on. First, I noticed yesterday they put off the Sarah Boone trial should have started already or this week. It was put off because of the hurricane that's pending.
This was her idea, wasn't it? She keeps trying to kick the can down the road.
She was offered a plea agreement of manslaughter and I think 15 years. She's already served 4. She would likely have served 8 of those 15. So in 4 years, she'd be done. And it would be, but she rejected the plea offer. There's some interesting developments on, there was a hearing over whether her statements should be admitted. The judge sided with the state on those. There are a couple that they just completely, a couple statements that the cops made are completely eliminated just because they're not relevant to the case. Basically, that the neighbors knew that she was a drunk and, stuff like that. They're like, yeah, we're fine. If you want to eliminate those, we'll take those out. But she was offered that plea agreement and nope, she rejected it. Now, the big announcement that I have is that a little case that you brought to me that we figured, we'll knock this out in one episode. And then 8 episodes later, 2 months later, we finally wrapped up a little case called Hannah Payne. I was invited into a Facebook group called Guilty Until Proven Innocent, the story of Hannah Payne. And it's run by her family. And they are now big fans of the Comm Center. They have our playlist has been shared with them. They have shared the playlist. I have something that will probably make you a little nervous, Jon. But I want Jim formerly from Florida, to hear this because it's a proud moment for me. There's a chap from the other side of the pond. He said, I have watched each podcast here in England and wish Drew Breasby could be Hannah's defense lawyer. Sending so much love to so-and-so and so-and-so from across the pond. Heart, heart, heart. So look, whatever you find out of, or whatever you get from this podcast, whatever you get from this YouTube channel, if you find the entertainment value, if you find the seriousness of our talks about PTSD and depression, or if you delve deeper into these cases like we're doing, like with Sarah Boone or very specifically Hannah Payne, you're making a difference. We're making a difference. And I always suspected that we would. And that's all the validation I need. We're not stopping with this Hannah Payne thing, by the way. I'm going to re-edit those into its own podcast, just like it did with Sarah Boone. So it makes it easier for them to share, and it takes out our banter and stuff like that. The status of her case is that she's been granted, or they've raised the funds to get a new attorney, and the new attorney is looking at several angles, and hopefully she'll get retried, some type of retrial. But that's so far the status. But if you're on Facebook, and I know that if you're under, say, 50, you probably aren't. But if you're on Facebook and you feel like popping into that Facebook group I just mentioned, please join them. they're taking one and all because they want the support. They want to get the word out. It's just like that Daniel Holtzclaw case I worked when I was on that. I helped present when I was on that other channel. It's the same situation. This is a travesty of justice, and that was also based in an errant decision that he was some kind of racist or he was targeting black women, and this is not how we do justice. We're innocent till proven guilty, but you actually have to play fair to prove them guilty. You can't just make assumptions or push agendas to make somebody look guilty. So I'm very pleased that we were able to provide a little hope for that family. It's my understanding that Hannah herself gets Facebook on Sundays, and she hears and reads and sees and everything else. So hopefully she's listening to what we're saying. But Jon, keep the cases coming. We're making a difference.
Apple, Spotify. This is one thing I actually want you guys to do. Actually leave a rating and review. Like, I look at the numbers on Spotify. I look at the numbers on Apple, and they're insufficient. So listen more. If you're watching on YouTube, it's still incumbent upon you to listen to the show still on Apple and iTunes. You don't have to sit there and listen the whole time, but you do need to download it. That's the most important thing. Turn on your automatic downloads. Yeah, we're on the old Instagram, I guess. That's where you could DM Drew as he waits bitterly for the end. Also on X, you could find us there. There was a Facebook group that was just perfect for us.